Well, I'm delighted to be talking with Chris Thomas, former minister. It took me a little time before you were able to talk to me. I know. And there's lots to talk about. I know you're very keen to about gas, hence we've come to the turbines here at the MUA. But I've got to go back and start dealing with things here. What exactly did make you go over that fence, or put your head above the parapet, however you want to face it, to vote against the Coleman decisions on that day when you knew exactly what was going to happen, right?
I didn't know exactly what would happen. I'm a principled politician. I took a principled decision on an important pre-declared position that I've had for 7 years. Basically, the Chief Minister has another principle in his politics, I think, which is loyalty. You know, it's all about you're one of us or you're not one of us. But my position is more about the people and representing the people. And the Chief Minister had 3 or 4 opportunities earlier on to make a decision the other way from the decision he eventually took. For instance, there were a couple of previous ideas for planning that I managed to squash inside the Council of Ministers. In the run-up to the actual vote, it became obvious that the vote was going to be lost. So at that point it could have been pulled, like yesterday's emergency powers covering people and places and activities was pulled. Through the debate it became obvious, even more obvious, that the vote was going to be lost. So at that point the government could have asked to withdraw the motion, and then once I voted against the motion having been lost, the Chief Minister had the opportunity to never mention to anybody other than the 8 ministers that he hadn't ever agreed that I had a pre-declared position. So I'm a principled politician. I took a stand for an important principle on planning law, on human rights, and that's where we are. Matter closed, Paul, if you don't mind.
No, not yet, because you said you didn't think you would be fired for that. Surely you did have an inkling that you'd already sort of rocked the boat in there. So clearly you stood your ground, but the potential was you were going to be fired. You can't tell me you did not see that as an option.
Yeah, in the same way that departmental members who vote against their minister have the chance that they'll be fired, and in the same way that other ministers who voted against government or government bodies in the last 3.5 years have known that there's a possibility they might eventually be fired. I knew that there was a chance, but what shocked me was the misunderstanding by the Chief Minister and the Chief Secretary, and perhaps even some other ministers, of how we fundamentally changed collective responsibility at the end of 2016 to bring Alf Cannon, me and Kate Beecroft into the Council of Ministers. So we changed it formally in the Government Code version February 2017, where the collective responsibility only applies to programme for government issues in the budget, or matters that are agreed by a majority of Council of Ministers to be of national importance.
Right.
And that one clearly can't have been of national importance because Tim Wood threw it out. Moreover, I clearly had a better pre-declared position than some of my colleagues in respect of other issues. Matter closed now, hey Paul?
I want to talk about what it was like in the Council of Ministers. Now you're free to talk about it. How much angst was there in there? Disagreement? I mean, was a lot of cracks being covered over to show a unified position to the public?
Oh yeah, there is. That's healthy. Nothing wrong with that. Every time I hear a minister tell you about how unified everything is, it's the sort of the old football manager syndrome. The board has complete confidence in me, or a board member says they've got complete confidence. No, obviously I wasn't the only person who had profound reservations about the planning decision. Another minister voted against it in Council of Ministers, and there were another couple of ministers at least who would have preferred a different course of action.
And over the years you've been in there, has it been hard for you to stay on message?
No, because I'm loyal to the programme for government, and a lot of the programme for government, as I've shared with you before and we've discussed, is around what I believe in. So there are some decisions that the government's taken that I regret they took at the time, and I would love to have spoken about them more. But no, I'm a loyal person to people I represent, a loyal person to the programme for government that I was instrumental in moving forward. And it's never been an issue to work as a team. You have to have a team in politics. You have to have collective responsibility, but the collective responsibility has got to be based around the programme for government, the agreed budget, matters of national importance, and basically representing the people in their best interest and national interest.
Now we're here because we're talking about gas, particularly. That's what you're keen to talk about. And you saw my interview with Barry Murphy, obviously. I'm a bit confused here because you were the guy who was meant to sort everything out, and nothing seems to have happened. Now you come out firing that you want the government to sort things out and blaming them for not sorting it out. Help me out here. How much responsibility do you take for the issue with the gas and not sorting it out?
I haven't blamed anybody for not sorting it out. It's an incredibly difficult thing to sort sort out.
You were meant to sort it out.
And I will sort it out at the end of the June Tynwald resolution. I think there'll be a very clear position about what Tynwald believes.
Should we talk what you put down? Just explain what you put down as a motion.
So in June Tynwald, as promised when I was speaking for government on the 28th of April, there is a motion which gives a clear declaration to Manx Gas Limited, to its shareholders beyond them, to the Manx public, so that the protest group can see, so that all Manx consumers and the Manx public can see that this individual who's moving the motion, former Minister Chris Thomas, chief negotiator for the government for several months, if not at least a year perhaps, that we should give notice under the 2015 gas agreement. That's the Isle of Man government should give notice, and that regulation should be imposed on Manx Gas Limited for retail customers in the spirit of the Gas Regulatory Committee's recommendations and UK practice. Moreover, the government should report back to Tynwald in July 2020 on how it's delivered Tynwald's agreement.
And if you stood with the minister, you wouldn't be having to propose this. You would have been doing it. Well, you proposed it, but you would have been literally putting it down as the Council of Ministers is saying this is the course of action.
Who knows what Council of Ministers would have decided?
Well, did you get that support in there?
But in 28th of April, my statement to Tynwald was agreed in the form of an answer to a
Did you get that support?
We hadn't come to the finalisation of the negotiations.
Well, you're getting support.
The negotiations were at a crucial stage, and that's why one of the profound disappointments I have not to be able to continue in my role as policy and
What was the feeling inside Council of Ministers? Was it?
I'll come back to that in a minute, crucial Paul, but the crucial thing is that on the 28th of April I made a statement that I would be reporting back to June Tynwald in respect of whether the negotiations are concluded successfully, whether they needed to be stalled, or whether we needed to give notice. Right. It became clear to me during May in my weekly negotiations that we needed to give notice, and that's what I'll be able to argue for now.
What was the feeling in Council of Ministers?
Council of Ministers, as the Chief Minister reported in the interview with you, was that he wanted his desperation that Manx Gas Limited and the shareholders behind them weren't playing the ball properly to be recorded. So I reported that message. But he'd written that down in February 2019. So
all right, because I thought he was being very positive to make a decision, but you don't go with him on. He's not going to come up with anything you want to hear.
No. I think he's very passionate that there should be a decision, but the decision is much more complicated than it first appears. Just pointing at somebody and saying you will do something is a bit more complicated than sorting out the issue of MUA, the future of whether or not domestic space is going to be heated electrically or by oil or by gas. It's complicated in the light of the fact that we've got an agreement with a powerful person in the form of a private enterprise with powerful shareholders behind it with lots of money that they're going to resist changing because
of course they will. They've got a 9.99 deal, haven't they?
Exactly. So it's pretty much complicated. So when we go into this, we've got to go into it with our eyes open. The people of the Isle of Man. There might be legal challenge. There might be veiled threats, as there have been in Jersey recently, and so on.
Well, anyone following Jersey, it's been fascinating. They put the prices up, and obviously gas consumption's been down in general because it's been such a warm summer sort of thing.
I don't want the Manx public to get the wrong impression from all of this. The shareholders behind Manx Gas are exactly the sorts of investors we need in the Isle of Man for our transition to deliver the climate change agenda. They've got lots of money, and they are an alternative energy investor as well as an owner of Manx Gas Limited. So I really do hope that we can't do justice to all the detail today on a windy day, but there's lots of wind in the Isle of Man. We could be putting in wind turbines. We could be changing the Electricity Act to change the way that we generate electricity. We could be going to people and saying quite clearly no more oil boilers installed in new builds. I think we have said that already by 2025.
As well, wasn't it?
And then gas as well banned in new builds from 2025. But people are asking, and Barry Murphy asked, should I be changing from gas to oil now?
It's a good question, I thought.
Government policy is really vague about that. It says at the appropriate time we might ban oil boilers for reinstatement of existing system. We need to be clear about that, Paul. So these are difficult questions. We need the proper dialogue, and I really do hope my motion goes the way I've moved it.
And if you get your motion, what do you think will happen?
I just think certainly government will have to report back in July 2020. They're set up for that. The negotiations were concluded in the sense that we'd swapped final letters. You could argue we'd swapped final letters between government and Manx Gas Limited. So let's see. My dream is the Chief Minister stands up to second my motion.
Oh, come on! Come on, seriously. He's thrown you out of government. He's not going to be your mate, sure. Well, I mean, who knows?
That's not what politics is about.
And you may be right, but come on, this is micro-politics in the Isle of Man.
Well, that's not what politics should be about. The national interest matters. The people who elect representatives to their House of Keys is what matters. Making it clear for gas consumers is what matters. Making it clear for good companies that can provide long-term investment for our transition to alternative energy is what matters. So we need the solution for all of this that makes sense in the national interest. We don't need a fight between Howard Quayle and Chris Thomas, and that's why I was very keen to stick to substantive
Well, good
issues.
luck. But I mean, other politicians have also questioned that you coming out firing now with all guns since coming out of Comyn, and you know, quite a few have questioned why now suddenly you've gotten so.
Really? I've only heard one person.
Well,
say
okay,
that.
one. So many. I've heard things, but I've seen one in print, and that was 2 people. So 2 doesn't make it 1 million people. Admittedly, I'll accept that. But people are questioning maybe why now you're so thing, which we're going around in circles slightly. I know, but are you confident? Then let's try that. You are going to get somewhere.
At this stage, I'm confident that I win all 5 of the motions because they make sense for the people of the Isle of Man who we represent as members of the House of Keys. Yeah, you asked me, was I frustrated over the last 3.5 years? And I was profoundly frustrated. You do get frustrated as a transformational politician because things do go slower than you want. There are all sorts of interests that take over the right decision along the way. There's a lot of brains, a lot of political firepower at the moment outside the Council of Ministers, and I really do hope that inside Tynwald in June we begin the process of using the next 15 months to make the decisions that we can make before a general election and setting up the general election so the questions that we still need to answer are on the table for people to actually make their mind.
We need to do more interviews with you, by the way. But are you going to be trolled to government overall? Are you going to be a rebel now that you've been sacked?
I'm not going to. What's the first word did you use?
Rebel.
I thought you used the word like cruel or something like that before you used the word rebel. No. I'm not going to enjoy fighting with the Chief Minister because
I'm
he is
slightly
a good
toying
person.
with you, as you know.
Yes, it's certainly the case that we need a bit of rebellion. We need a bit of joining up of some new ideas. At the end of 3.5 years in any government, you know, you've worked out what can happen and what can't happen. I am shocked, surprised, disappointed to have been fired. That wasn't the rational thing to do. I can understand why it happened, and I knew there was a possibility it would happen because I follow the ripples, and an important part of the Council of Ministers dynamics is loyalty. Okay. And
I feel that there's a little crack in the door here. If you got invited back, given a little cooling off period, given something maybe like the MUA, you know, would you like that? Potentially?
No, I'm. John Shimon, my predecessor for Minister for Policy and Reform, was invited back. He got replaced by Chris Robertshaw much before the election. I can't see.
So would you like to be invited back or not? Sorry.
I'll be back in the Council of Ministers, but I'm absolutely sure it won't be happening before September 2021 unless there's something taken under statute before then.
Okay.
If I was offered a role in the MUA, if I was offered a role in the Post Office,
well, if I
was offered a role which I could do something inside Tynwald policy review committees and play the role that Chris Robertshaw did, of course I would. And I'm not a thorn in the side. I'm not a rebel for rebel's sake, but I do want the right policies in the national interest. I do represent the people of Douglas Central and the Isle of Man to the best of my ability, and I'll be doing everything I can to lay out the challenges that we've got and to provide answers that I want everybody to consider as being possibilities to answer and rise to those challenges.